majority and we decide we're not going to run, because now is the time to show we patriotism. For we country facing, it's that is our, so our people need us.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for that fantastic introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, that should give you some idea of Team PNM, because we are a team, a well-knit, functioning, high-level team. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and Member of Parliament for Diego Martin West. Your own Member of Parliament here in Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, Minister Stuart Young, the Member of Parliament for Laventille West, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, my colleague, the Minister of Labour, Small Enterprises, other members of Cabinet, other members of Parliament, members of the Port of Spain City Corporation, members of the leadership of the People's National Movement, the executive, MPs, members generally, and my boys from Bagatelle as well. Thanks for coming. It's a great pleasure for me to be here tonight. There's a tradition that the PNM, this is a long-standing tradition. When I joined the PNM in 1987, I met this tradition, and it had been going on for many years before that, where after the presentation of the budget, whether in opposition or in government, the PNM would come to this spot, Piggot's Corner, and educate the population on the national budget, and that is my task tonight. We have gone through a very, very, very difficult year. 2017 was not easy. You'll have heard me say just recently that on a number of occasions in the last 12 months, we in the government, we in the Ministry of Finance found it very difficult to pay public servant salaries and wages, and to pay for essential goods and services, to pay to keep the hospitals running, to pay old age pension. But we persevered and we made it happen. And on several occasions, we had to go to the commercial banks and borrow money just to make sure we could meet our commitments and to keep this country running smoothly. Just yesterday, I went into the office and I was going through some correspondence, and I saw a letter that the governor of the central bank had written me around the middle of September. And the governor was pointing out to me, this is just a couple of weeks ago, that the overdraft at the central bank, you see, the government has a bank account at the central bank, just like any company or any person. There's a general current account at the central bank. That's where all the government revenue goes into that account, and all of the expenditure, all of the payments that the government makes on a daily basis comes out of that account. But that account has an overdraft limit that is set by legislation. And that account, for all the years that the PNM was in government, that account was in credit. In fact, in 2010, when the other government came in, the government's current account at the central bank had $6 billion in cash, in credit in it. And they managed between 2010 and 2012 to spend all that money and to take that account from $6 billion, that's 6,000 million in May 2010, down to zero in 2012, and then down to minus $9 billion in September 2015. They use up the whole overdraft. So they burn up $15 billion. It was +6. They take it to -9. They burn up $15 billion in cash. So we met that when we came in. So we've been running this country for the last 24 months with the overdraft almost up to the limit, so that often we will be told, look, you have to stop writing checks. You have to stop issuing releases. So I saw this letter from the governor of the central bank, and he told me that the overdraft is now at 99.7% of the limit. You know what that means? We had a couple $1 million left in the current account. And this country costs $4 billion a month to run, $4 billion a month. That's what it costs to run this country. It costs about $130 million a day. So when the governor wrote me, I had enough money in the current account. The government had enough money in the current account just 3 weeks ago to run the country for about 5 minutes. So that is what we faced, but we were able to deal with it. We have a good team. We coordinated. We got cash from the commercial banks, and we were able to run the country. So we've had a very, 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 very difficult year. Very, very difficult year. But we made it through. We made it through. And we are going to make it through 2018. And we're going to make it through 2019. And we're going to make it through 2020. We're going to make it. As I said in my budget speech, we can make it if we try. That is a good calypso. We can make it if we try. And certainly we can. So what we've been doing as we came in in 2015. We found this ridiculous situation where one of our state corporations had $16 billion in cash in its bank account, the National Gas Company. Because of what the PNM had done in the PNM years, that company had all of this money in its bank account. $16 billion. And after they bust the overdraft, the next thing they did was they started to raid the bank account of the National Gas Company. And between 2012 and 2015, they took out $16 billion out of the bank account of the National Gas Company. So they take $15 billion out of the government current account, and they take 16, it's not million I'm talking about, I'm talking about $16,000 million. That's $31,000 million that they burn up between 2012 and 2015. And as I'm reminded, the leader of the opposition came to Parliament today to lie about that. Because you see, I put it in my budget speech. And of course, they're weak, They're not strong, They're weak. If any of you listen to the leader of the opposition performance today, they are weak. They're not strong. So they don't have good research capability. So I put it in the speech, in the budget statement, that they raid the National Gas Company and take out $16 billion. And then there was a rule that they could only take 50% of the profits from the National Gas Company in any 1 year. They changed the rules in the election year. In 2015, they changed it so that they could take out 100% of the profits of the National Gas Company. So I put that in my speech. So the leader of the opposition come today to try and deal with that and say that's not true. And they didn't take out 16, they only take out 11. Well, even if it was 11, even though that is a lie, that's still plenty. She said, no, it's not true, we didn't take out 16, we take out 11. And that thing about how we change the rules, that ain't true. So, what they didn't know is that I got that information out of a joint select committee report laid in the Parliament on the 29th of September by a committee chaired by the opposition, chaired by Senator Wade Mark. I took it from Wade Mark's report laid in the Parliament. And Minister Young read out the Joint Select Committee report today on the National Gas Company. They couldn't say a word because it's Wade Mark say so. It's not Imbert say so, it's Wade Mark say that they take out 16 billion and they change the rule so they could take out 100% of the profits. But that is how they ran this country. False expectations. That's why I call it false sense of reality, running a false economy. When you run in an economy where you increase the public debt from $46 billion to $76 billion, that's what they do, you know. They come in and meet it at 46. They borrowed $30 billion. They take out $15 billion from the current account. They take out $16 billion from the National Gas Company. That is how they were running this country. Now, no economy, no household could work like that. That's like you're running a household, you mortgage the TV, you mortgage the bed, you mortgage the fridge, you take an advance on your salary, you sell your shoes, you borrow from the neighbor. How long could that go on? That is how they were running this country. It was a fraud. So we came in and we met that. And you know, soon after we came into government and I was appointed Minister of Finance, one of the first things I had to do was to meet with the rating agencies. We have agencies that do a credit rating for Trinidad and Tobago. One is called Moody's, and the other is called Standard & Poor's. And based on the credit rating that they give you, it determines the cost of borrowing. So they'll give you an A or a B, as the case may be, and that determines what price, what interest rate you will have to pay if you have to go to borrow money. So I had a meet with Moody's. The lady come in the room. They don't write the report already, you know. This is a couple months after we come into government, you know. She said, we're going to downgrade Trinidad and Tobago. I said, where? I said, will the meeting ain't start yet? She said, that's all right. The last government bankrupt the country. Think it easy? So we have been climbing back from that, and we were able to change the outlook of this country in terms of the eyes of the rating agencies from negative to stable. That's what we've been able to do. We've been able to stabilize it. But that is the kind of challenge we face as we came in. Overdraft up to here. No money coming in. They changed the taxation system in the energy sector. And they lying about it. One of the oil companies came and gave us some information and showed us the tremendous fall off in petroleum taxes that this country was receiving. If you see the graph, in 2013 and 2014 it was up here. In 2016 down here. And then they showed me a table and they said, Minister, based on our losses carried forward and based on the tax system in this country, we won't be able to pay you petroleum tax until the year 2025. I just last month, you know. I say so. And we in the PNM, we are very serious. If you look at this budget, you will see we are not pandering to anyone. Everybody must share in the burden of adjustment. Everyone. We are not in the pockets of any group. We have taken a hard look at this economy. And that is why we look at the commercial banks and we see that they are making super profits. You have a recession going on. People scrunting and one of the banks making $1 billion in profit. So they have to share in the adjustment. Everybody had to share. So that's why we put an extra 5% on the banks in terms of income tax. And to their credit, I must say, the majority of the banks are not complaining. They're not complaining. They understand. They understand that everybody must share in the burden of adjustment. And we also decided we had a choice because we need revenue, and you need to understand what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago. We have brought expenditure down from 63 billion to 50 billion. We cut it by 13 billion. That was no easy feat. And you know what that tells you? There was $13 billion of waste, mismanagement, and corruption in the government expenditure. Because how could you remove $13 billion of government expenditure per year and the country still running? How would that happen? We've removed the waste and the corruption and the mismanagement. So we have it down now to 50. But we have a problem. Because even with the new taxes in this budget, at the best, we may be able to raise about $40 billion from taxation. So we're missing 10. Understand what I'm saying? With the new taxes and the best tax collection possible, and we go after everybody who is evading tax and avoiding tax, and we put an army of people outside there, which we will be doing, the most we could raise in this 2018 financial year is $40 billion. But the expenditure is 50. So there's a gap of 10. And the way we're going to deal with that, we're going to finance 5 billion. Some will be borrowing, some will come from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. And the other 5 billion will come from debt recovery from the CLICO and the CL Financial Group of companies. Because understand something, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the last government, took $23 billion of taxpayers' money. Hear the figure, Colm? $23 billion of taxpayers' money. And gave it to a private company. When we did the CLICO bailout and we went out of office, the figure was $5 billion. We had put $5 billion into CLICO to make sure that the company would not collapse. Somehow they put an next 17. And I heard the leader of the opposition today, another one of her untruths, saying that they came in and they inherit $23 billion in debt at CLICO. Lie. It's 5. It's them send up the thing from 5 to 23 with their irresponsibility. So this government is very serious, eh? Because for 5 years and 3 months, they made no serious attempt to recover that $23 billion of your money that was put to bail out a private company. No serious attempt. We have to get that money back. That is taxpayers' money. That is poor people's money. That is your money. And we need it to run the country. We need to recover that debt. So we will be recovering about $5 billion in this year. We did the bold step of putting the company in liquidation. It was the only thing we could do because the shareholders wanted to throw the government off the board. They wanted to take back the company. And if we had allowed them to do that, your money would have go up in smoke, Crapo, smoke your pipe, and they walk away. So we did what we had to do. We are very serious people. But as I said in my budget speech, we understand how emotional Trinidadians and Tobagonians are about CLICO. We understand. It's a local company formed by Trinidadians and Tobagonians. It grew, it prospered. It affected a lot of people in this country. So there's an emotional attachment between the people of this country and CLICO and the CLICO group of companies. We understand that. And that's why we have made a decision. We are not going to have an auction of CLICO assets, because if we do that, it will end up in the hands of people who already have a lot of money. That is not our intention. So we're going to create a mutual fund like the unit trust, and we're going to put the assets of Colonial Life into that fund. So you could buy units, so you will share in the profits of these companies, and the companies will be continued as going concerns. Companies like Angostura and companies like Republic Bank. That is how we see as giving back to the people, taking these assets and making them available to the ordinary man. And you know, I listened to the opposition leader today. She didn't say one word about that. She didn't say one word about our programs except to make all kind of spurious allegations. One of the things, let me talk to you now about 2 programs, because we are a very innovative party and a very innovative government. We recognize housing, for example. As a member of parliament myself, when I go to my constituency office on a Thursday, there are 2 things primarily that my constituents come to see me about. 2 things: job and housing. They have other things, of course. They want me to help them with medical and various other things. But the majority of the people coming through that door, they want me to assist them with a HTC house or a job. And this has been going on for years. And the backlog of applications at the Housing Development Corporation is over 100,000. And It costs billions of dollars to build houses. It will take 20 to 25 years to build all those houses, that 100,000 houses. It's impossible, especially in the current situation where oil price has dropped so low. So, we put our thinking cap on. See, how are we going to deal with this problem? And another feature that we have discovered as PNM MPs, and I heard the leader of the opposition talk some nonsense about that today. We have discovered also, a lot of our people, a lot of the people that come to see us, they want rental accommodation, or they want rent-to-own accommodation, because they can't afford. A lot of them earning minimum wage, 2 people on minimum wage. They can't afford to purchase an HTC property. They want rental. And as things improve and they improve themselves, then they'll be in a position to purchase. That's what rent-to-own is all about. A portion of the rent goes towards reducing the cost price of the house when you're eventually in a position to buy it. So we recognize a lot of our people are looking at rent-to-own. So we said, look, what was the NHA or the HCC set up for? Why was it set up in the first place? Those houses in River Estate and Diamond Vale and Pleasantville, why were those communities developed by Eric Williams and the Chamber's government? Why? It was to provide affordable housing, low-income housing for you, the people. So we said, you see that? This HCC has moved away from building affordable housing for people in the lower and middle-income groups, and it was starting to build houses for rich people. I mean, look at the development down in West Moorings there. So we decided we have to bring HCC back to its original moorings and provide rental accommodation and rent-to-own accommodation and affordable housing for those of our citizens who can afford it. But we recognize there's still a significant number of people who can purchase. And what's available to them? We said, all right, we want to boost the economy. We want to provide housing. Let's see if we could put the two things together. So we came up with our housing construction incentive program. Because right now, it costs the Ministry of Housing $1 million to build a HCC house. But they have to sell it for $500,000 because it's subsidized. So on every house that the HCC constructs, it costs them $1 million when you add in infrastructure and administration. $1 million to build a HCC house, but you could only sell it for $500,000 or $600,000. So the HCC is losing $500,000 per house. So say, how could we deal with that? So here the PNM plan. We are going to pay private citizens who can organize land, and if you can't organize the land yourself, we will make state land available to you, suitable state land. You go and organize your labor, organize your financing, build the houses, sell them, and for every house that you do like that, to our designs, to our specifications, and at our prices, you're going to make sure they're affordable, we give you $100,000. $100,000 for every single house that you build to our specifications at our price. And you know what that does? That saves the government $400,000 in losses on every HCC house. Saves us $400,000 a house. But what it does, because this program is available to the man who built in 1 house, 2 house, 4 house, 10 house, 20 house, 100 house. It's across the board from the little man who would gather up together some money with his associates and his family and maybe construct 4 houses on a lot of land, because we're changing the planning permission where possible as well, so that you could put 4 apartments upstairs and downstairs on 1 lot of land. There's a lot of that around this country. So you could build, one little small contractor could build 4 houses, for which he will get $400,000. And up to, yes, up to, of course. I'm being reminded. And for that, 4 people on the HTC list, because we're not doing this just so, you know. They will also have to make these houses available to the 150,000 people on the HCC list. We're not stupid. We have a social objective to fulfill. So the builder gets up to $100,000 per unit. The citizen gets an affordable house, and the HCC list is satisfied. And you know what that will do? It will employ thousands of people. Masons, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, laborer, roofers. It will employ truckers, drivers. It will create activity in the hardware stores. It will create activity in the sand pit and the gravel pit. It will boost economic activity. So it will create employment, boost economic activity. It will provide houses. It will give cash incentives to private citizens from the little man to the big man. So that is one of the programs that we have put into this budget. And I put an allocation of $50 million to get it going. That will give us at least 1,000 houses. So I put that inside of there, and we're going to continue this program and supplement it as it gets going. And we know one of the biggest problems with housing construction in this country is building approvals. You go by town and country planning, sometimes it takes you up to a year to get approval. Then you have to go by the EMA. Then you have to go by WASA. Then you have to go by fire services. Then you have to go by the city corporation to get your plans approved. We know that these things are difficult and they create problems. So recognizing that and knowing that, the Prime Minister reminded me that when he was Minister of Housing, and a very successful one too, he started the construction of 26,000 houses when he was Minister of Housing. He ain't no joker, you know. The last Minister of Housing started 4,000. 4,000. 4,000 in 5 years and 3 months. Dr. Rowley started 26,000 houses in the 7 years. No, not 7 years, sorry. 4 years that he was in the Ministry of Housing, because he was just there from 2003 to 2007. So we know, and he reminded me, the Prime Minister reminded me, he used to have a meeting every 2 weeks with all the applications for building approvals for all the HTC projects. And he would bring everybody together, and he'd say, WASA, what you have to say, and Ministry of Works, what you have to say, and they would coordinate and expedite and accelerate the approvals process. So we have decided to do exactly the same thing. We're putting a high-level committee. It will start off being chaired by the Prime Minister to show you how important it is to us to accelerate approvals for this private sector housing construction program. You know what they had to say? Stupidness they had to say? They say the Prime Minister chairing a committee to accelerate building approvals is political interference. They say giving private people $100,000, up to $100,000 to build a HTC house, mean we have to close down the HTC. Lady wasn't listening. I said HTC will use the resources that it has to continue its own program. HTC could build maybe 2,000 houses a year max, but we need much more than that. And we feel with this program we could get up to 5,000, 6,000 houses per year. They have nothing to say. Another program that we came up with, I didn't hear a word about it, is our incentive program for small businesses. Because there are so many people in this country that run small businesses. They make things. A lot of them in the food and beverage industry. A lot of them in the handicraft industry. They make things, but they don't have the capital to buy raw materials or to establish a place of business or to buy essential equipment to kickstart their business. So their business cannot grow. So they find themselves every month struggling to pay salaries, to pay the light bill, to pay the telephone bill and so on. That is typical for a small business. But there are so many economies in the world. Europe, for example, almost 100% of business activity in Europe, the figure I got was 98%, is from small companies, believe it or not. Throughout the whole of Europe, their economy is run on small business. Firms employing 5 people, 10 people, 25 people. So we said if Europe could do it, why can't we? Recognizing the problem of cash flow, recognizing the problem that small businesses, they need startup capital. So any of you have seen the Shark Tank program or the Dragon's Den program on TV? Where you have these successful, businessmen, millionaires who come, and somebody will come and make a pitch and say, this is my idea, and I'd like you to invest in my business. And depending on how it goes, they will get an investment from this group of businessmen. So we are going to create a Trinidad and Tobago Shark Tank. And you, the small business people of this country, you will pitch your idea, your request for capital to these successful businessmen. and they will determine whether it's a good idea or not and whether you should be given this grant. The grant is up to $100,000. And once our team of private, successful business people say, yes, that small business is a good idea, give them $100,000, it goes to a ministerial committee for disbursement. And we, again, have put $50 million into this year's budget. We believe we can help at least 500 small businesses in this year, 2018, and going forward. And I'm sure all of you have small business understand what I'm talking about. You need a start. You need a helping hand. That is what you will get from this People's National Movement government. Because we care about people. We know you. We understand what you need. And I trust that you have the confidence in us as a government to steer this country through this very difficult period. One of the things about this budget is affected so many areas. As I said, we are not in the pockets of any interest group. We look at the thing as a whole, and we decide everybody must share in the burden. So one of the changes we made with respect to taxes on motor cars, because last year, in order to move towards more environmentally friendly vehicles, we put in a program that hybrid vehicles, those are vehicles that work both with gasoline engines, diesel engines, and electric engines, would be free of tax. Well, boy, Trinidadians good, you know. They started bringing Mercedes, BMW, Porsche. They're not easy, you know. So the customs came to me the month before the budget. They said, Minister, you have to do something about this. I said, what do you mean? They said, look at the figures. Before last year, only about 60 hybrid vehicles had come into the country. Last year when we made the change, 3,500 came in, and the duties and taxes that we had to give up was $250 million. We can't lose $250 million. So understand, we don't operate by VAPs. That's why we've made the change. Understand we have a plan. Understand we are very purposeful. We are very deliberate. We want to bring this country back into balance. We want to make a better life for you and your children. So we ask you to bear with us. Bear with the PNM. We understand what we're doing. We have a vision, and we will look after you and make sure that your future and your children's future is assured. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.